they're going to go through, because there's going to be crowds of at least, if not 20, 30 plus their entourage. So every single step they take within the routes, within the designated path, it has to be completely safe and secure. So it looks to be a bright day over there, don't you think, Aisha? It looks pretty, sunny day and bright.
Today is a very sunny day in Bali.
We had a little bit of rain in some parts of Bali last night, but hopefully that's it for last night. And we are expecting a very friendly weather today, a balmy weather here in Bali. As most of our delegates, if you know, from the Western countries, they've just arrived from, the beginning of winter, I suppose, if not the end of autumn, which means it should be quite cold. And arriving here at the balmy weather of Bali, they should feel very comfortable.
Yeah. Like escaping the winter.
Escaping the winter. That's a lot of Western people would do.
But it's literally, because now there's also a saying, some parts of the world, they're expecting to get out from the winter economic situation.
Winter economic situation.
Yes. So we will still be airing live and give you more updates on the activities of Day 2 G20 Leaders Summit.
Hey, good morning. Coming to you live from Bali, Indonesia. This is Day 2 of the G20 Leaders Summit under Indonesia's presidency. And we come to you all day long of the final day. There's a lot of the G20 Leaders Summits. My name is Rahmat Idris.
And I am Aisha Fabian. So, Rahmat, how are you feeling today?
I am feeling excited. I'm all awake. The coffee did its magic. However, there's lots to expect today. We have a lot of information and yet another one coming up, Aisha, before we go in deeper into this agenda.
Okay, so this one is 30 years ago, this year. The text of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change was adopted.
This was a significant milestone as it solidified a collective commitment from countries around the world to tackle climate change together. It was a recognition that climate change was a global problem that required a global solution. In the meantime,
the biggest surprise was being asked to do the job. It was a welcome surprise, a happy accident, if you like.
My biggest surprise was to notice how, when I was able to go beyond the head-to-head conversation and have a heart-to-heart conversation, how do we turn up in the world as humans? Those conversations were transformative.
What is very clear is that there is nothing, absolutely nothing that you can achieve if you are acting alone.
I was there for the adoption of the convention. 92 was there for the adoption of the Kyoto Protocol. There was a lot of backroom dealing and putting people together and keeping people out. And in the end, the masterly chairperson of the negotiations, Raúl Estrada Oyuela of Argentina, brought his hammer down. And I was happy. My friends and colleagues were happy.
I think the time in Bali when we agreed the Bali Action Plan, because that was really the moment when we tore down the Berlin Wall of climate action, when we really said, yes, it's definitely true that industrialized countries cause this problem. It's definitely true that industrialized nations need to take their responsibility and to help poorer brothers and sisters to engage on this topic and change their economic model.
How does one reconcile the need to act against climate change with the need to get out of poverty? And that is still an underlying issue as we go along. How does one address the environmental problem, to call it that, at the same time as allowing people, permitting people to get out of absolute poverty. That, to me, has always been the fundamental issue.
At the end of the day, we can only succeed together. We all need to engage. Our challenge is a negotiating process. And our challenge as a secretariat, which facilitates that, is to find the way to do that, to enable that global engagement.
I had the pleasure of assuming the responsibility for the international negotiations 6 months after Copenhagen, and it was a very dark moment for climate. And I think that a global treaty on climate would never be possible. In fact, I remember clearly that at my first press conference, someone asked me, a journalist asked me, so Ms. Figueres, do you think a global climate agreement will ever be possible? And I said, no, not in my lifetime. There was a general conclusion that it would not be possible. So I remember leaving the press conference room having decided that I would prove myself wrong, and that I would dedicate my efforts and all of my focus to making a global agreement possible.
There's a saying in the English language, and probably in many other languages as well, that where there is a will, there is a way. And I felt throughout my UNFCCC tenure and ever since that we need to turn that saying around and, in fact, maybe conclude that where there is a way, there is a will. What I mean by that is that I feel that there is today pretty much a universal commitment to the challenge of climate change and the need to act on it, but that many political leaders and many corporate leaders and many people in the public don't yet see the way. They don't yet see how they can act on this global challenge of climate change, while at the same time grow their economies, protect their lifestyles, win the next election, or get the corporate bonus that they're hoping for. So a big part of the challenge that's still ahead of us, I think, is to show that it is actually possible to do what we all feel is morally right.
Without trust, there is no possibility of having collective action. And in a process that involves almost 200 countries with such diverse realities and also multiple stakeholders from different entities, that means that you find very frequently competing interests. But at the same time, in order to make this common sense of action prevail, you need to find the right balance between the interest of all those actors. And that is required in order to preserve trust.
The phase that we're in is very much the era of action and understanding how we can actually do what we all feel we need to be doing. And one of the important things to think about is how the role of the UNFCCC changes in the context of those different phases. And I very much see the challenge of the Secretariat, of the process, of the people that attend the COPs in networking to build the possible.
We have strengthened what we call inclusive multilateralism, which is making the process more inclusive, allowing many stakeholders from different areas to participate actively. I think this is very important, not only because the transformation that needs to happen requires to have every single person on board, but also because it is necessary that they get a sense of ownership of the process. It is not only the governments. The governments alone cannot get this transformation.
moment I will never forget is the moment the gavel came down when Minister Fabius brought the gavel down on the adoption of the Paris Agreement. And it took me a few seconds to internalize that that was it, that the Paris Agreement had been adopted. And then as I jumped out of my seat, I locked eyes with two sets of people. One was my two daughters sitting in the front seat, and the second was the Secretariat staff that was lining the plenary hall way in the back. And I was just filled with such gratitude for the unbelievable work that those people had done during years. And I knew that this was very likely the most important moment for them as well.
The positive things I see coming out of the post-Paris process is the broadening of engagement, more and more parties, more and more players becoming involved, and the UNFCCC process becoming much less a sort of closed-door intergovernmental thing and much more an open process that allows multiple societal players to engage.
Today, the participation of many stakeholders is just par for the course. We are seeing so much more transition capacity outside of national governments. We had so many different coalitions that came together in order to support governments. That was the whole point. It wasn't to criticize governments or blame them or hit them over the head. Quite the contrary. It was to support the efforts of governments. And today that has grown into being a very well accepted and very highly frequented part of COPs and of course throughout the year.
Climate change is not just a matter for the environment minister. Climate change is for the whole government. It affects the whole way that the economy and society works. Governments get their act together, especially the ministers, and steer the economy in the right direction. There's hope, but it will take time. The other side is a much greater emphasis on accountability, on making sure that people are doing what they are saying that they are doing. And that isn't just governments, it would have to extend beyond.
I am convinced that addressing climate change in a timely fashion is not a matter of faith or hope. It is a matter of decision. It is a matter of choice. It is a matter of courage. It is a matter of standing up precisely because we've run out of time. It's about standing up, having the courage precisely at these moments when we have so much bad news that is pouring over us. This is the moment when we have that responsibility. Every single one of us who is alive, and especially alive as an adult right now, has the responsibility to stand up and show up and do what needs to be done. So this is not about hope. This is about courage. This is about doing what needs to be done.
Yeah, so there we have it, some visuals, some very significant commentaries, Aisha, from the United Nations of Climate Change, UNFCCC,
yes,
as giving us more insights on how important efforts for climate change is, and those particular statements are now echoed by what our G20 leader summits will do.
Yes, it is a very, very important mission to accomplish from us all,
exactly,
to make the world a better place.
Yeah, and all of these great economies should take a major contributions in the climate change.
Yes, and however, the Minister of Environment and Forestry, Siti Nurbaya, opened the Joint Environment and Climate Ministers Meeting, or JECMM, on August 31st, 2022 in Bali Nusa Dua Convention Center. So let's have a look.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu. Very good morning, Excellencies, distinguished heads of delegation, esteemed delegates, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Indonesia. It is indeed my honor to host this G20 Joint Environment and Climate Ministers meeting in this island of gods, Bali. Let me take this opportunity to convey my highest appreciation to you all. Your presence today reflects your support to our G20 presidency and your friendship to the people of Indonesia. It also reflects your commitments to G20 to make it relevant and matters. Beyond stunning natural beauty and magical temples, Bali has long been an example of unity in diversity, living side by side in peace and harmony with our brothers and sisters from different cultures and religions. This is our Indonesian experience, as the old wisdom says that we are only as strong as we are united, as weak as we are undivided. Now, it is high time that we incorporate this spirit into our discussion to address various environmental and climate issues we are confronting. It is our duty to make every effort to reap tangible results towards sustainable global recovery. I sincerely hope that from our discussion today, we will find ways to move forward to a higher level. With that said, with your indulgence, today's meeting will run as follows. Session 1 will focus on issues to achieve environment objective towards sustainable recovery. It is then followed by the adoption of the G20 Joint Environment and Climate Communique. Session 2 will focus on enhancing and mobilizing efforts towards climate sustainability. Before we start our session, let me first share a few thoughts and perspectives to frame our discussion. Excellencies, distinguished heads of delegation, esteemed delegates, ladies and gentlemen, global environment problems require global solutions. Even as we are gathered on this beautiful island, we cannot hide from the fact that the world is facing increasingly compounding challenges such as population growth, water crisis, resource scarcity, energy insecurity, as well as environmental degradation. And as if those are not enough, we know that climate change could become an amplifier and multiplier of the crisis. It would not only wipe out all development progress that has been achieved over the past decades, particularly in emerging economies, but it would also propel us over an environmental tipping point into uncharted territory where no future will be sustainable. There is no one single country that is not adversely affected in one way or another, and we cannot solve those global environmental problems alone. Therefore, we all have the responsibility to safeguard environmental multilateralism to make it work. Environmental multilateralism is the only mechanism where all countries, regardless of their size and wealth, stand on equal footing and equal treatment. The voices of all countries, North and South, developed and developing, must be heard. For that reason, in this auspicious opportunity, Indonesia presidency has invited for the first time our brothers and sisters representative from CARICOM, the African Union, as well as NEPAD, to attend this important meeting. Their concern and interest should matter. Each and every country can contribute to the solution in one way or another. Environmental multilateralism is also the only way to effectively coordinate efforts to tackle global challenges. In this light, let us do our best to strengthen strategic trust and mutual respect, since multilateralism can only deliver when there is trust among us. Hence, it is also our responsibility to be part of the solution. We build bridges, not walls, and we promote common interest, not self-interest. Excellencies, distinguished heads of delegation, esteemed delegates, ladies and gentlemen, collective actions and global partnership are imperative if we are to tackle global environment challenges and to lead the world towards sustainable recovery. High hope is now on our shoulders, and we cannot fail. G20 needs to be relevant to the world at large and not only to its members. I hope these perspectives could provide some enrichment for our endeavor, and I look forward to having a progressive and productive discussion with you all today. Thank you.
All right, so that was the opening remarks of the Minister of Environment and Forestry of the Republic of Indonesia, Siti Nurbaya. Just met this year, Aisyah, for the joint ministerial level for the climate change as a part of the G20 efforts to sort of further discuss and deliberate on our efforts, collective efforts within the G20 for the climate change.
And from that meeting, actually, there are some core agreements and on environmental issues as well.
Exactly.
Is reducing the impact of land degradation and drought, increasing the protection, conservation, and sustainable restoration of land and forest ecosystems, because we know that is very, very important to reduce the impact of climate change and loss of biodiversity, as well as land damage. The third one, so therefore, in enhancing cooperation with various parties, capacity building, sharing of experiences, learning, and making nature-based and ecosystem-based multilateral policies and agreement, and also efforts to reduce pollution and environmental damage.
All right, so there you see it again. On the right side of the screen, we have live pictures from Tahura here in Bali, Indonesia. And Tahura stands for Taman Hutan Raya, or literally translated as the Grand Forest Park of Ngurah Rai, Bali, Indonesia, where today, as the second day of the Leaders' Summit will unfold, the heads of states, all the presidents and the prime ministers will be visiting the Grand Forest Park as a part of a symbolic gesture for climate change.
Yes, and not only visiting the Tahura, but they will also have some activity, mangrove planting.
Yes, and these is exactly essentials as we look at the preparations there, moments towards the arrival of the heads of states. The gestures of symbolizations of tree planting of the heads of states will water down to their respective countries, meaning that these head of states, presidents and prime ministers will set examples to their citizens on the collective efforts within the G20 to promote the global and all the major economies' efforts in terms of reaching the goals of Paris Accord, 1.5 Celsius decrease to the temperature of our planet, and net zero emissions of carbon dioxide.
And actually, it has been like a signature activities of Indonesia. If we welcome heads of state, if it's for like a bilateral visit or presidential visit, usually happens at the Bogor Presidential Palace.
Exactly. And now a change of scenery. The palace is transformed into the beautiful nature of Bali. This will be a great experience because just last night they also attended another cultural affairs at the gala dinner at Garuda Wisnu Kencana, so they get to see all of these wonderful sides of Bali. So just to give you a background on the Tahura or the Taman Hutan Raya or the Grand Forest Park of Ngurah Rai, it is one of the locations designated to be visited by the heads of states for the G20 Leaders Summit in Bali. And today is the agenda where they'll be visiting the Tahura, the Grand Forest Parks, and do a mangrove tree planting. And according to President Joko Widodo, the President of the Republic of Indonesia, this effort truly a gesture to symbolize our concerns towards the environment and our focus towards reforestation, be it mangrove or tropical rain forest. All right. So what's also interesting is that this specific mangrove forest that will be visited by our heads of states has the width of about 1,375 hectares, meaning that it plays a significant role in absorbing the carbon monoxide and also reducing emissions around the city.
Yes, and it's not only for our generation, but for the future generation.
Exactly. So that's the very point of sustainability, keeping it sustained, not for the current generations, but for the next. So the benefits can be felt not right now, Aisha, but we feel it in 10, 20, 30, even 40 years.
Yes.
Sustaining our planet and the Mother Earth. So for your children's children.
Children's
and
children.
For my children's children. So, right. Okay, so as we said earlier, heads of states will be arriving at Tahura, hailing from all the G20 member states. And when we talk about the G20 member states, one of most notable, also part of Western Alliance, is the United Kingdom,
With the new elected Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who happened to be very, very dashing last night at the gala dinner, because there's he's been a talk of the town, and also
he's newly elected. We thought Boris Johnson was going to be here, and then second thought Liz Truss is going to be here, and then that's to be dashing, if I may add, striking, and another dashing.
So he came with a magenta shirt last night.
Oh, you remember the color?
Of course.
Wow. Very meticulous attention towards Rishi Sunak.
When he arrived, we witnessed it together at the media center, and we all cheered.
Wow. Wow. I can only imagine the euphoria of having head of states coming by to a media center, because that's exactly a dream of journalists, to be able to speak to a head of states. But however, security measures, as you said, is very strict. All right. So just to give you illustrations of the United Kingdom, or the UK, as one of the member states of the G20, we have put together a special feature report for you to look at. Have a look.
The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is known as the United Kingdom, the UK, Britain, or even England. The country on the island of Great Britain in northwestern Europe comprises of England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, which occupies the northeastern part of the island of Ireland. The country's only land border exists on the island of Ireland. That is the border with the Republic of Ireland. The UK is separated from continental Europe by the English Channel. The kingdom is situated on an archipelago known as the British Isles, with two main islands, Great Britain and Ireland, plus the surrounding island groups of the Hebrides, the Shetlands, the Orkneys, the Isle of Man, and the Isle of Wight. The group is located southeast of Iceland, west of Norway and Denmark, between the North Sea in the east and the North Atlantic Ocean in the west. The UK shares maritime borders with Belgium, Denmark, France, Germany, and the Netherlands, also Norway and the Faroe Islands of Denmark. With an area of 242,900 square kilometers, the United Kingdom is not quite half the size of Spain, or slightly smaller than the US state of Oregon. The UK has a population of 66.8 million people in 2020. The capital and largest city is London. And the spoken language is, guess what? British English. Okay, there is also Welsh, Irish Gaelic, and Scottish Gaelic. The UK was one of the 28 member states of the European Union, or EU, but since a kind of populist referendum in June 2016, the UK is now left.
Okay.
So we're back here on live coverage of the second day of the G20 Leaders Summit, and we are bringing you live pictures from Taman Hutan Raya, or the Grand Forest Park of Ngurah Rai, Bali, Indonesia. And also Ms. Fifi here already joining us in the studio from CSIS. We are looking at pictures of inspection from the President of the Republic of Indonesia, His Excellency Joko Widodo. He was accompanied alongside Ministry of Environment and Forestry. Let's take a look. Right, crowds have gathered at Tahura, Aisha. And also we can see that President Joko Widodo is currently providing brief explanations to, we believe it's members of the media, most probably, before the arrival of heads of states conducting the tree planting.
So it's like another rehearsal, like you mentioned before, the path, it has to go smoothly because there will be like the members countries, heads of states are joining later for the tour, Tahura, and also mangrove planting activity.
Yeah.
So this actually has been done by President Joko Widodo himself, together with the Coordinating Minister of Maritime Affairs and Investment, Luhut Binsar Panjaitan, Minister of State, for State Secretary Pratikno, also Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ibu Retno Marsudi, Minister of PUPR, Basuki Mulyono, and to accompany the President to ensure from the G20 participating countries today. So it was last week on Tuesday, 8th of
the G20 Leaders Summit here in Bali. It is estimated that the official visit of the heads of state at Taman Hutan Raya, or the Grand Forest Park of Bali, time, and that is 8 a.m. Western Indonesian time. So we expect in just a matter of minutes, maybe arriving here at Taman Hutan Raya. And brief instruction from President Joko Widodo alongside Minister Siti Nurbaya, Minister of Environment and Forestry, and also the Governor of Bali, Iwayan Koster, wearing a very beautiful and attractive pink udeng, the headwear for men here in Bali.
And the color represents the color of G20.
It does. It does. The red hue and maroon hue as the major backgrounds were
like a dress code for some of the occasions and activities that they are doing for the Leader Summit.
Yeah, and if you got to see last night's gala dinner, it was just mesmerizing to see President Joko Widodo had this Balinese attire.
Yes.
It was just, me and our Balinese Kercho Devi, we were just astonished by the extravagance of Balinese costume represented by our president. So that was quite a moment last night to witness. So again, you are looking at live pictures from the Grand Forest Park of Denpasar, Bali, Indonesia, where you can see the mangrove forest, President of and Forestry of Indonesia, and also there in the back, Coordinating Minister for Maritime Affairs and Investments, Luhut Binsar Panjaitan, making sure the final preparations, smoothing out all the details, and make sure that every single designated path that will be taken by head are secured, are safe. 2 snipers, as also said by Aisha Elias, have been standing by around the vicinity, including 180 security personnel from Indonesia, not to include external ones from each entourage of the head of state. Right, so let's take a look at the Tahura itself. As you can see, it's a Grand Forest park in Ngurah Rai in Bali is mainly to reduce the possibility or the threat of tsunami coming in from the nearby ocean. So the mangrove forest here is also some sort of a nature laboratory for research and also conservation areas for many types of bird species and rare or even near extinct animals. But also it becomes such a natural and conserved habitats for lizards. We're talking about the so-called biawak or big lizards, and I would say the descendants of Komodo dragons, but they're not in smaller scales. And many types of birds. So reaching the heights of about 3 meters above sea level. It is also forming the ecosystems of many types of bioras.
We really should visit this Grand Forest Park, Ngurah Rai or Tahura as well.
Yeah. Feels like a soothing experience to just walk on those pathways and the bridge and just sort of basking in the fresh breath of air and the glorious nature. It will ground you back down to Mother Earth and bring you a refreshed appreciation for nature. And as is the case for today's event, there's a symbol of restoring natures by heads of delegates, presidents and prime ministers for the G20. So our president looks very happy there, Aisha. So we believe everything has been running according to plan. And we're waiting for moments of arrivals of heads of states.
Yes, in just a few minutes. And now, as Ms. Fifi has joined us, the Deputy Executive Director for Research from CSIS. Ms. Fifi, do you think that Joe Biden will also be joining us today? Because he was absent last night, right, at the gala dinner. That has been also the talk of the town. A question like why why he missed that, and will he be present today at the Tahura to mangrove planting activities?
Right. I guess what Aisha is asking, Ms. Fifi, said, do you have any tip from the White House?
No.
What exactly?
I don't have any tips from the White House, but I think the official excuse from the U.S. government last night, or at least the representative last night, was that he had business to take care of, which was quite common sense, because that means, last night here would be a Tuesday morning in Washington, D.C., right? And you understand that the current domestic politics in the U.S. after the midterm election and so on. So I'm pretty sure as the U.S. president, he would assume he would have a ton of business to take care of. So I'm pretty sure there was something urgent that we don't know of. But they assured us it was not health related. So that's good news. So we'll just wait and see whether or not he...
Indonesia post the very successful for Democrat midterm elections in the U.S.
Well, it's basically good news for him with the result of the midterm election. I mean, he has less to worry about carrying out his policies. He doesn't have to worry about having to gain approval from the Senate and so on for his foreign policy. So it's a little bit easier task for him moving forward. And also we've seen him. Well, he was in Egypt before here, and then he went to Cambodia, and then here. There's a series of different issues included in his foreign policy. So hopefully, then he will have an easier job ahead.
And it's interesting, Fifi, you mentioned that President Joe Biden had just come from COP27 in Egypt, because that event is pretty much in line with what we're doing today here at the mangrove forest here in Bali, efforts towards climate change. How do you see the commitments of superpower nations like the US and China, aside from developing economies, to really contribute to Paris Accord? At some point, President Donald Trump in his administrations had exited the Paris Accord. and then re-entered in the time of Joe Biden. So how do you see the role of these superpower nations in ensuring we reach the target for the Paris Climate Agreement?
Sure. Well, Joe Biden made a very interesting speech at the COP27, right? Basically reiterating US's commitment and how it should be a leader in climate talks and so on. So, the gestures are there, the statements of commitments are there. But we also have to keep in mind that all these major countries, they also have domestic politics which decide the kinds of policies they move forward, including on these commitments on climate change. So with countries like the US, if you simply read the news, you would easily find, oppositions towards some of the climate policies from within the countries itself. I guess it's the same thing, even in all countries, there would be oppositions towards this somewhat, some people call it drastic change into lifestyle and so on, right? Like I said, the commitment is there, but of course, we need to also take into account the dynamics within the domestic politics as well.
Yeah. And for the common people, it's the change of mindset too, to sort of, as you say, a change of lifestyle, the way we do things, the way we discard and throw away things, that plays a significant collective impact towards our efforts of climate change. And looking at the pictures again, Fifi and also Aisha, we see that President Joko Widodo, look at that, kneeling down at the seedlings bed of mangrove trees. And as we mentioned earlier, at this particular area of mangrove forest, over 6 million seedlings of mangrove trees are located, contributing significantly to the efforts of reforestations across the nations, most especially in Bali.
Yes, here in Tahura, they have 33 types of mangroves, to be exact.
Yeah. And they each play a significant role in reducing the impact of tsunami, or the possibility of it, the threats of it, and other meteorological disasters that may occur around coastal areas. I guess some parts of it are very visible upon descending down in Bali, because as we know, the international airport of Igusti Ngurah Rai is located somewhere in the coastal area. So this is too when you land during daytime. Right, Fifi, back to you again. We know that this is considered as a ceremonial gesture of our heads of state. It's very symbolic. The mangrove tree planting, inspecting nature signs. But what sort of impact will it give towards the global community in giving an overall pictures of their commitments towards the climate change efforts?
Yeah, this symbolic activities, I think we find in a lot of other international events as well. It helps to create awareness. The media would love reporting this. We all over the media as we speak. Nowadays it's easier to get this sort of information and people become more aware. That's the whole idea of it. But then, of course, raise awareness takes a lot more than symbolic gestures or symbolic activities like this. But I guess this is one of the important ways to do it. Yeah, you mentioned about changing mindset. How can you change mindset if you don't have an example of how it would look like if you do change your mindset?
We need to have exemplary figures.
Like there are a way to talk about climate change from a very early age.
Greta Thunberg.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's the young people now who will reap the benefit, Fifi, of the sustainability efforts, of the climate change efforts that we are conducting at the moment. So we're doing it for the next generations.
Yeah, giving information about climate change and how important that is with the digital transition as well.
Right. So it doesn't mean that we're going to be planting trees digitally in the future, right? So digital green efforts. Right? I'm a little bit offside.
You can donate the money digitally.
Yes. For the efforts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just tap in for green. Tap in for green efforts.
Now there are many programs that, even from the government, if you buy something and then get to like.
Yes. Yeah. And I was in Thailand just a couple of weeks ago, and then there's this movement in so the collective movement of the younger generations is something to applaud here, because they're really raising awareness across the globe, wherever they are, on how important it is for the current generations to do whatever effort they can to contribute to nature preservation, as is done by the Indonesian G20 this year. Again, you are looking at live pictures that we're bringing in from the Tahura of Ngurah Rai, and that is Taman Hutan Raya, the Grand Forest Park of Ngurah Rai here in Bali, Indonesia. We are there in the screen. You can see President Joko Widodo alongside the Minister of Environment and Forestry of Indonesia, Siti Nurbaya, so the Governor of Bali, Iwayan Koster, and at some point there, I thought I saw the Coordinating Minister. Yes, there he is, Luhut Binsar Panjaitan, Coordinating Minister for Maritime Affairs and Investment of Indonesia. All of these stakeholders playing such a significant roles in inciting public awareness. Fifi, you mentioned awareness, because raising awareness is a intricate thing to do. Not everyone they might be aware, but they don't care enough to a point where they will mimic the gesture. So, what's the most significant thing that we can do, probably on the part of the leaders, to raise this awareness?
You're doing it right. According to the mission, I mean, you're doing it right now. I guess for academics like myself, writing publications is also part of raising awareness. I guess it goes back to your personal identity, the role you play in society, and then are, of course, different roles to play. And there's no one issue that would fit everyone. So I think everybody has their cup of tea in terms of, contributing to the issue.
Right. Yeah, and it is very important that to imply it from this very simple thing, and from your daily activities, your daily, like stopping using plastic straw,
or at least reducing it. Stopping altogether is a very hard task.
So after changing the mindset, you have to change your habit as well.
You start with yourself first, and then inviting others. All right, you're still looking at the right side of the screens, the live pictures we're bringing in from the second day of the G20 Leaders Summit in Bali, Indonesia, where the heads of states, the leaders will congregate to take part in the symbolic actions of tree planting efforts, in this case mangrove trees, around the area of public grand forest of Bali. And just momentarily, if it's according to schedules, heads of states will be arriving in just a few minutes, but we are looking forward to the visuals that we're getting from the site.
This will be the first agenda for Day 2 G20 Leaders Summit here in Bali. I think it will be a kind of toning down to start the day. Maybe before. Yes, before.
All the signings and all hell broke loose. No, we don't expect that.
No.
But let's go very quickly, Fifi. What can we expect for Day 2 of the summit? I know we start with such a relaxing activity, as said by Aisha. Expect here.
I guess the same thing that we expected yesterday. I mean, we were looking forward on how some of the issues would be discussed, whether or not there will be any breakthrough initiatives or ideas. I personally would not expect something new coming out of the summit itself, because a lot has been discussed throughout the year. So we're probably going to see, a summary of what has been put into effort throughout this one full year.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I may enlighten all of us, and including our viewers out there, on the brief rundown of the agendas of our heads of delegates today. So this morning, around 9 up to 10 a.m., there'll be right midday, there will be a side event of financial inclusion in small and medium enterprises. The third working session will take place after lunch, and that failed to reach a communique with a final paragraph touching on 3 based on the working group's achievements of only January, not a communique.
No, yeah, you're absolutely. Also, other task force related to digital transformation managed. I think that should be put into account as well. I mean, the success of the working group should not depend on the joint communique per se. If you know what I'm saying. Pretty sure that they're going to discuss some of the initiatives that was agreed upon, and how they can move forward from there.
Because if we look back on the discussions, one of the main topics of the digital transformations, of course, is G20 nations. First was building on digital infrastructures, and that's everyone agreed on, the knowledge sharing and everything. And one of the most sensitive issues for the digital transformations from our observations in the past year was that on the issue of cross-border data flow and data flow with trust. So these two issues have always been the hardest, because there is at the moment on some specific member country within the G20. So how do you think the issue of trust will play a significant role when there is an apparent lack of it?
Well, I mean, the issues of trust, I think, clearly relates to the inequality of lack of trust would be a result from their technology and so on. So I think across all other issues is generally, mistrust creates because there's imbalance, there's inequality, which means that the effort should be put in this particular.
Adding to that is the fact that Russia has one of the most advanced with, and that trust has been closely related to Russia's actions with the ongoing war. So that also posed such a unique situation, if I may say, because we'd like to learn from a country that, okay, so let's take a look again, Fifi and I pictures there. Just right now, President Joko Widodo had a bit of resting times at the bungalow, a small bungalow there, while the final preparations are made just moments before the arrival of heads of states.
Yes, it is a elliptical wooden building that the committee has prepared for this summit. Welcome all the delegates and heads of state. Oh, I'm very curious. It's one of the uniqueness of Indonesia that we can offer to the world, and for them to experience
by government officials and presidential delegates. It's also a moment of history, because this tree, they usually have some sort of signage to it saying that this particular tree was planted by the who and who. So so that's going to say, like 10 years from now, this was planted by Joe Biden. And next to it, this was planted by Xi Jinping, for example. So that is a moment of history itself, and that's going to stay there as long as the tree is alive. I don't know for this case though, because this is a forest. You can probably easily spot one specific tree among hundreds, if not thousands of them planted. How things have been planned for these head of states to take part in that ceremony.
Yes, because there are 33 types of plants and mangroves in Tahura. So because most of the time when there's a presidential visit, we will prepare like a plan specifically to the philosophy between like the bilateral relation between Indonesia and that country.
Okay. So there is a mangrove tree that represents trade, and there is a mangrove tree that represents politics.
No. It's more about prosperity.
So I get this wrong, I suppose.
It's more about like prosperity, relation, and so many philosophy that the tree can represent. And do you think like it will also be prepared by our committees from the G20 to prepare like each plant type for each head of state to represent the bilateral relation between Indonesia and the country.
That needs to be solved.
I'm not an expert on plans, but that would make an extremely interesting gesture, wouldn't it? Now, if I could say something, I'm reflecting. I was thinking something, seeing all these pictures of the mangrove, and we were talking about domestic politics, right? I mean, if you recall, more than a year ago, so this was be mid 2021, you start seeing all these banners on the streets, G20, Indonesia is going to be president of G20, and so on and so forth. And then started this whole campaign, basically campaign to the public in Indonesia about the importance of G20, with the objective of gaining the domestic support for Indonesia. And one of the ways of the campaign is to lay out what are the benefits of G20 to the public of Indonesia, things that will be felt directly by the. If not, then the public would feel distant. They wouldn't understand what G20 is, what it brings for us, what the benefit would be. And then, at the time, of course, of the data that was shown was, how many jobs it would create, how it would, the benefits it would bring for Indonesia. And I think it's one of these things, it shows directly the relations between G20 and the public, discussing about environment and the impact of the results of G20 on the environment of Indonesia. I think it's a way of giving the answers to the Indonesian public that the G20 does bring benefit to, one way or the other, be it on economy, on environment, on a lot of other issues.
Many other sectors. Right. So just to give a background knowledge on the G20 itself, we discussed this during the kickoff, Fifi, that it actually started due to the monetary crisis, if I'm not mistaken, back in 2009. That's a long way to go from now. So we can re-enlighten the public exactly what the G20 is, what this entity is comprised of.
Sure, yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. It started off as a response to the financial crisis, 97, 90, I think mostly in East Asia, and then the one in 2007, 2008. So that's why in 2009, then the G20 started basically as a response that, financial issues will have impact globally if not governed in a way that is proper to all of the countries involved. So and I think during the early years of the G20, the discussion were very specific on finance issues. The summit in 2009 was considered very successful. In coming up with new initiatives regarding to govern financial issues globally. And then the years after that, still the same. But of course, as the financial sector has met success, of course, countries would want to expand the types of cooperation. So that's when the new issues start coming in. New president of G20 would bring in new issues into the discussion. So that's why we understand that in G20 there's the finance track and there's the Sherpa track. And that could include issues as wide-ranging as from climate change to now digital transformation and health recovery and so on. So on the one hand, it's good that G20 has become a lot more inclusive in terms of issues, but on the other hand, it has become more and more difficult.
Such a
wide range of
diverse element
issues.
in it, yeah.
2 days of summit will not be enough to cover all of this massive list of issues. So there's a new challenge. So on the one hand, it's good that it's stretching its issues discussed, but on the other hand, it's always very difficult for the host, for the chair to ensure that all these issues are properly discussed. But then again, new chair of G20 would want to insert its identity into the G20, so new issues would be coming in every year, which presents challenge to the next presidency.
Right. It's also interesting due to the fact that the branching out of issues that should be tackled by the G20 would pose difficulties in finding common grounds and to come up with resolutions. So how do you measure the success of a G20 presidencies and all of these deliberations? Is it maybe finance track where we see agreements there? Because finance is also the structures for all of these other probably in the Sherpa elements to be built on. But does Sherpa track achievements also come into account in terms of measuring the success of a presidency of the G20? Fifi?
I think that's also the challenge. Now it's really difficult to make an indicator of a success of a G20 because of the current situation and then the list of issues discussed. You ask different people, they would give you different answers. Absolutely. To some people who's focusing on the tradition of G20, on the essence of G20, would of course focus on the finance track, on the initiatives made towards finance, in finance, responses towards financial crisis, and so on. Those who are more in favor of expanding the issues would of course highlight the importance of the issues discussed in the Sherpa track, of course. Those who would be more interested in the sort of like
the
symbolic, also the symbolic of the importance of the G20 would put more on the sort of like the issues of the attendance, the existence of the documents, and so on. So again, you ask different people, you would get different answers, I suppose.
And how they can solve the current pressing matter, which in this case is the war and the ongoing what's that food and energy security. How we can lower the price of plane tickets and how we can get more food into the countries that truly need them.
And also the health sector. It was the issue that was put on the table yesterday on the first day, like the
that's
health,
also
on health and food and energy security. But on health issues, as a matter of fact, it's one of the very, very important issue to discuss, especially during this Indonesia G20 presidency, because we cannot say that we are at the end of the pandemic, but I can say maybe the positive result from that sector, that the pandemic fund. Do you think that's a positive result, that a significant result, because it is there already, the pandemic fund?
Absolutely. I mean, from my point of view, it's a clear example of a very practical and implementable result of the whole G20 process. And it should be, I think it should be highlighted of a success of Indonesia's presidency as well. Because of course, a lot of criticisms, if you recall, 3 years ago, a pandemic as massive as COVID-19. So we need to, for future pandemics, we need to prepare more. And a pandemic fund is definitely one of the factors that need to be put in place in order to respond to future pandemic.
The PPR, Ibu Sri Mulyani would put it, the pandemic preparedness and response. And the 1.4 billion in the pandemic fund is a cushion for all of us globally should future pandemic occurs. So Fifi, we will take a quick break here in the program. We'll be right back with more conversations and more live coverage on the second day of the G20 Leader Summit here live from Bali. We'll be right back.
love, we are in jeopardy. Striving times turn back to solidarity. Our wish to heal the world, we shall do whatever must be done. Recover together, recover stronger. Navigate the sea of change. We have always overcome hand in hand. Recover together. We'll recover stronger. Reaching out for our children's future destiny. I wish heal the world. Whatever must be done, recover together, recover stronger. Navigate the sea of change. We have always overcome. Recover together. We'll recover stronger. Reaching out for our children's future destiny. Yes, it's from us history. Bringing us again. Recover together. Navigate the sea of change. We have always overcome hand in hand. Recover together. We'll recover stronger. Reaching out. Children's future, for children's future
For a better world.
As the world's economy is still strongly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, Indonesia, holding the 2022 G20 presidency, encourages world countries to work together to achieve a stronger and more sustainable recover together, recover stronger.
three main pillars of Indonesia's presidency for the G20 throughout 2022, namely global health architecture, sustainable energy transition, and digital transformation, with the strategic goal to achieve a developed and a more prosperous global economy in the future.
Be the witness to a series of historic events across the nation.
As we bring to you Indonesia's presidency leading to the G20 summit only on
TVR World. We're covered together. We're covered stronger.
Okay, so we are back here for the updates and report for the Day-2 G20 Leader Summit that is currently happening here in Bali. As we mentioned, like since yesterday, that Indonesia G20 presidency.
Pak Jokowi said it's the hardest ever in the history of G20.
Because so many unexpected moments happened during the preparation, during the year, since we got the handover from Italy to Indonesia. And then on February, there was the start of the Russian-Ukraine invasion. And
all right. So on that note, Aisha and also here, let's talk about the latest developments currently making headlines across the globe. So I'm just because we don't want to use the wrong word here, but Poland, as a member of NATO, has stated that we're not certain yet whether the missile fell in their territory or whether it was specifically hit by the missile. But we'd like to get your insights on that, Fifi, while we take a look right now at the mangrove tree planting by the heads of state of the G20 member states.
Where here they will discuss the matter and the issue of climate change. But yes, since we mentioned about that of the Day-2 G20 Leaders Day.
Exactly. So a lot of ongoing. However, this is a beautiful morning in Bali. We're hoping from all of the organizations on behalf of the host, we're hoping all of heads of delegates can just, for a while, take their minds off all the complications and all the hard topics and just sort of, states at the side of the Grand Forest Park, the Tahura, greeted personally by President Joko Widodo. So this moment reminds us of what transpired yesterday at the arrivals of the first day of summit. Fifi, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I mean, yesterday we missed the usual family photo of the G20, right? So I think this would be somewhat of a replacement when they take photos, when they plant mangrove trees and so on. So this is going to, I think, symbolically replace the traditional G20 family photo.
Yeah. When we talk about the family photo, Fifi, from my own experience of being a part of several working groups of the G20 across the year, that has been a missing element of every G20 deliberations, be it at the delegates level, all the way to the ministerial level, and we saw it yesterday at the president level. A missing part of a very traditional family photo of the G20 due to the presence of Russian delegates. They do not want to be in the same frame with Russian delegates, and that is something for us as a host. We feel like we're missing out on that because that's all an integral of the G20, and we couldn't do it due to the disagreements and objections from other member states, particularly the Western allies.
Sure. Yeah, but I think this is hoped to be a good enough separate photo, but they're doing an activity while at the same time pictures are taken of them at the same time.
And in regard to that, there was this funny story. There was no family photo with everyone in suit, very of the working meeting. But then when everyone for digital economy working group visited the Komodo Dragon Islands, everyone posed for the photo together, very happily smiling. So that was, as you said, a replacement to the formal family photo that we usually have before the meeting. So hopefully we can see that happening here. So fingers crossed.
And especially because like taking family photos in Indonesia, that's like a tradition.
Yes.
Even for us.
And the word family is something that unites, something that signifies closeness. So we really hope that to have at least one for the president.
Yeah. Because it was also analyzed by the president.
The unity, putting aside our differences.
And how collaboration between countries is very, very important.
Yes.
So if we can get like all together in one photo, that can represent the unity.
And we are looking at the arrivals of more heads of states here at the Tahura or Grand Forest Port of Mangrove.
At the airport, they were welcomed by the Balinese dance, and now the local Balinese people are welcoming them by, with holding the flags of the members' country.
Sure.
So it is already a warm welcome for the heads of state and also invitees.
But the question is, as you also said earlier, Aisha, is whether or not every single one of the delegates participating in the summit will take part. Joe Biden was absent last night for the dinner, and Sergei Lavrov had to be rushed to the hospital for general health checkup at the beginning. So we'll see whether or not everyone will make it to the tree planting session here in Bali, and that is in Ngurah Rai area. We are looking at more arrivals of distinguished delegates. I guess the first part is always representatives of invited guests, and this is a representation of Mexican presidents who's not able to attend. The foreign ministers of Mexico is here. And more arrivals of heads of states and representatives of the summit. So it seems like a white shirt is the dress code here, because most of them are wearing folded up sleeve white shirt, including our president Joko Widodo. So that will make a nice family photo, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Everyone in a casual.
It's like a song.
That'd be wearing in the balmy weather of Bali, where it can get quite, the humidity and everything, since it's near the ocean. So. And as we see, delegates are welcomed in person by President of Indonesia, Joko Widodo, alongside the Governor of Bali, Iwan Koster, also in the back there, the Minister of Environment and Forestry of Indonesia, Siti Nurbaya. Again, looking at live pictures we are bringing in from Taman Hutan Raya, the Grand Forest Park of Bali, where the scheduled mangrove tree planting, a symbol towards the climate change efforts, will take place in just a few moments. And we are looking at the arrivals of heads of state.
the G20 Asia presidency.
Indeed. And what's also interesting about the fact of the heads of states attending the mangrove tree planting sessions today and personally inspecting the area of the Grand Forest Park, the local people, the Balinese of Hindu beliefs, have had the ceremony of Melaspas and Mecaru, and these are ceremonies that is meant to cleanse the entire facilities and vicinity of the area in order to welcome the delegates, especially the heads of states of the G20 Leader Summits here in Bali. And this is also in line with what we see on a day-to-day basis here in Bali, where the religious activities to the heart of the Balinese people can always be seen through all day long, especially in the morning, presenting offerings to the gods, praying for a beautiful and wonderful and successful day. And that was so in line with the ceremony of Melaspas Mecaru a day prior to the time festing as planned.
We talked earlier, such a relaxing. I don't know. I really don't know.
That was also making headlines and garnering public's attentions because it's a rare sight to see where we see both the presidents, Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono and Megawati, not only at the same event but at the same table. But let's put that off our discussion today because it's a bit stepping from our attention of the G20. So while we wait for more arrival at the Taman Hutra,
because I heard that he already left.
Yes, and it's a very wait and see.
But so far, the heads of state that have arrived and greeted and also welcomed personally by the president looked relaxed and happy, but hopefully they will not walk like 1,373 hectares of the whole mangrove.
They're not going to walk that long, especially in broad daylight. I'd like to get your take. It's interesting when they put this some sort of excursion or it's usually at the end of a program when you go to a site, you sort of relax and unwind after you sign the deal. But in our agenda, this is done prior to the final, moments of the conclusions, the signings and the handing over. Why do you think that is, Fifi?
Because this is part of the deal, isn't it? I mean, excursion, but it is a whole symbolic of the issues discussed during the G20. With issues of environment, climate, so on.
Ghebreyesus from the WHO, Director General of WHO, Tedros Ghebreyesus, has just arrived. So signifying representations of the United Nations this time, central figure of the pandemic, to the final moments of our deliberations of the leader summits, because health has always been also a central theme of the G20 deliberations. As a matter of fact, it is the first theme. So do continue. Shouldn't put the climate change issue behind. So
exactly. So this is part of the even though this is symbolic, but this is part exactly of what they are discussing on the table with a lot of the issues very much related to this. So putting it as the start of the thing highlights, you can discuss on the table as much as you want, but without actually seeing the practicality and how it impacts the real lives of the people directly, part of the whole agenda, and I think they put it
across the table, but putting it into actions. We would say that put your money where your mouth is.
Sure.
Or is that the other way around?
No, but then also this replaces the family photo, which was supposedly always part of the agenda, the official agenda.
Yeah, we look forward to seeing that very moment manifested and realized here at the Grand Forest Park. FSB Chair Class Note has also arrived there at the Forest Park. So from our experience yesterday at the arrival for the first day of the G20 summits, arrivals can take quite a while. So this may last, I don't know, another 20, 30 minutes until all the delegates arrive. Meaning that it's going to be a bit pushed from the initial schedule that has been put in plan for the agenda today. So in the meantime, Fifi, I'd like to get your take on something that we've touched on earlier prior to these visuals about the latest developments in Europe.
Sure.
And how Poland has stated that one of the missiles of Russia had either landed or intentionally hit. We are updating on that term. But how do you see this? Because Poland is a member of NATO. This can cause a riot, especially within the NATO members. And Joe Biden is here. Western alliances, a lot of the leaders of the NATO is here in Bali. How do you think, and we also have information that NATO will have an emergency meeting at the headquarters. So how do you think this will play out?
No, absolutely. This is, I think, a new development in the whole Ukraine crisis. A few days ago, we saw that the Russian troops had to withdraw from Kherson, and then we predicted that it would signal somewhat Russia's slow withdrawal from other parts as well. But turns out it doesn't. It hasn't been that way. I mean, Russia has actually been intensifying its forces in other areas, and now we're seeing incidents like this. So it signifies that the war is far from over. A few months ago, we were talking about a prolonged war because leaders could not see a real way out of it. But now, with this happening now, it seems that it might take even longer than we had predicted.
Well, echoing what you said, Fifi, it is true that Kherson has been taken back by the Ukrainians. The Russians have withdrawn from that city. But the fact that we wouldn't dare to say that, I don't know if they're actually going with it, Russian would hit a NATO member, the territory of a NATO member. Is that even plausible for Russia at this point, particularly with the moments of G20 leaders summit here in Bali?
Yeah, and in addition, it killed 2 people. Actually,
so there have been reported casualties.
I mean, we don't have any details of it as of yet, so it's really hard to say. But I think reading the updates as of now, a lot of people are under the assumption that the missile was not supposed to hit Poland. But we don't know for sure. I mean, the whole details of what happened, and I think. Even the NATO countries are going to hold an emergency meeting, and I think they're going to discuss
whether or not it is intentional on Russian part.
What actually happened.
Because from what the public knows, with all of the terms of ballistic missiles and everything, ballistic means you set the coordinates and then you launch it. It should be pretty precise with the current technology of ballistic missiles. So the fact that it hit the territory of Poland with if it is a ballistic missile, so the coordinates should have been set. They should have known that it would be landing at a Poland territory, and particularly at a site where I don't know if it's military casualties or civilian casualties, but we do have casualties from that. So that's going to raise some concern and some deep discussions. But again, this is a developing stories. We don't want to go over what has been reported. So we're just going to wait for it to develop. So from what you've observed in the past year from the Russia and Ukraine war, what's the current stance? You say that there's a lot of withdrawals from Russian troops, but we can't see any ceasefire happening anytime soon. But what's your current analysis of the war? With the state that it is in at the moment?
I mean, a few months ago, we predicted it was going to be a long war. Now at this stage, we are still predicting the same thing, right? It's true. A lot of analysis have mentioned that Russia is actually having a lot of problems in terms of not only in terms of military equipment, or they're getting troubles into recruiting conscripts and so on. So the morale of the troops is really, really down. But at the same time, I think the policy is to go to continue the war, and we have not heard any change of the Russian part yet. and you have to take into account so there is going to be a point where the sources of the Ukrainian military equipment
Even though at his press conference a couple of days ago, Biden said that we'll continue to supply the Ukrainians with whatever they need, but again, but kudos should be given where it's due, like the resilience of the Ukrainians, the resilience of their military under President Volodymyr Zelensky's leaderships is something to marvel at. It's a wonder of its own up to this point. I mean, so many months after the attack. But let's just go. Let's go over to Tahura while we give you more details on the released Fifi and Aisha that Polish media earlier reported that projectiles had landed on a farm in the NATO members' territory, and that is Poland's territory, roughly the same time as Russia launched its biggest wave of missile attacks on Ukrainian cities in more than a month. So maybe if it's the biggest wave of missiles, one of two maybe go off track and land in Poland, but we don't know yet.
And I think the word projectiles really makes a difference.
As you said, so that can also miss. And U.S. President Joe Biden was holding an emergency roundtable with world leaders at the G20 in Bali, and NATO had also announced it will hold an emergency meeting Wednesday, and that is today. Today to discuss the incident at the border.
And this morning at 5:36 a.m., Charles Michel, he also tweeted that he just spoke with Morawiecki and assured him of full EU unity and solidarity in support of Poland. I will propose a coordination meeting on Wednesday with EU leaders attending G20 here in Bali.
All right. So this is the latest updates from the ground that we received just 10 minutes ago. This is the latest that we have from the ground. U.S. President Joe Biden and leaders from the G7 and NATO are holding a previously unscheduled meeting. I should say were, because it ended around 10 minutes ago. Unscheduled meeting, the explosion in Poland that killed 2 people. Poland said a Russian-made missile fell on a village near the Ukrainian border. So it is near the border on Tuesday. And the meeting attendees here in Bali include Biden and German Chancellor, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, French President Emmanuel Macron, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, Japanese Prime Minister Kishida Fumio, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, and European Council President Charles Michel, the one that you mentioned, Aisha. And when the group was briefly captured on camera today, Wednesday, Bali time, morning local time, Biden was asked whether he could tell reporters more about what he knows about the explosion in Poland. He briefly said no, but we expect a press briefing momentarily. So hopefully Biden will be saying something to the media instead of us speculating on what their theory is. It wouldn't be safe to bet at this point, we suppose, Fifi, because all of the developments can be really dynamic. So we're just going to have to wait for that.
Yeah, because the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, he decried the strike as a very significant escalation, quote unquote, on the war. That's a statement. That's a strong statement. Do you have any comments on that? Like the Ukrainian president has already commented and on the strike. Maybe we can say strike.
And more importantly, we need to wait for Sergei Lavrov to say something about this on behalf of the Russians, whether or not it was intended or it was a missed hit. But from your analysis, Fifi, would Russia make such a move, hitting a NATO member territory?
At this point, it's really hard to make any logic of this whole issue, right? So any is possible. But I do think that any statement would come from Moscow. I'm not too sure Minister Lavrov would make any statements here, but I could be wrong.
So we'll have to just wait for more reports coming in. And most importantly, words of confirmations from these leaders while they're here. So probably the Russian statement will be delivered in Russia, we suppose, from the capital, from Moscow, from the Kremlin, as they said. And then we expect more information coming in here from Bali, particularly where the leaders have congregated. The car with the South Korean flag has just descended upon the front part of the circular building here at the Tahura, where we can see President Yoon Suk Yeol arriving. President South Korea, Yoon Suk Yeol, has just arrived and being greeted by the presidents momentarily. Oh, he's greeted by Mr. Luhut bin Sarpanjaitan at this time. So that's a bit of a change of scene. And there's our president. Okay, so from our observations, the entire day yesterday, from morning to night, traffic has been the hardest hit here in Bali, we may tell you. And on behalf of the government, we're going to have to at some point apologize to the common people who are, doing their day-to-day activities for all of the disruptions. But it is also in great pleasure to host all of these heads of state. This is a moment that we should truly be proud of. And for some of the people on the street, moments of grave patience is required.
because from your personal experience, you walked for like
a 15-minute drive lasted for close to 2 hours last night. So that's just a short illustration of what we had to
I was stuck in traffic for 2 hours because for the Gala Dunia.
But they didn't roll down their window just to give us a wave. You know? I mean, I would like to be waved by Rishi Sunak, for example, or just to see Mr. Macron, or maybe Mr. Modi, just to see him up close. But that is not a possibility. President of South Korea there arriving, Sir Ramaphosa.
South Africa.
I should say South Africa. South Korea just momentarily. Slip of tongue here. Thank you very much for the correction. PV South African President Cyril Ramaphosa disembarking and walking down the red carpet to greet the President of Indonesia.
And also from our observations so far, the mood of the heads of state are still pretty okay.
Yeah, so they still arrived happy wherever they are in Bali.
But we have not seen the NATO members country.
Because the meeting, as we mentioned very early this morning, I guess that is also the reason why there's this delay attending, because we believe the arrangements will be reported minutes ago. They held an emergency meeting, all of these NATO leaders here, mangrove tree planting here in the Nusa Dua, Bali.
Yeah, and we're waiting if President Joe Biden will give any message on that.
Right. So we're going to be bringing in a live report, we hope, from the Grand Forest part of Tahura. We're awaiting our colleague to give us a first-hand account of what's exactly the mood there, the atmosphere.
To be connected with our reporter for live cross with Muhammad Arif to tell us more about the Leader Summit Day 2 at Tahura.
Right. Arif, what more can you tell us about the situations? And I mean, your deep observations of the Tahura. We're quite curious as to why the delay has taken place for almost an hour now from the initial schedule. Arif, what more can you tell us? Your report, please.
Right. Thank you, Rahmat Idris and Aisha. Well, on Wednesday, the head of delegates today, for sure, is set to visit one of the most famous tourist attractions in Bali, which is Tahura Ngurah Rai Mangrove Forest. Not just for enjoyment purpose, this momentum is also used to bring more awareness, to the public in regards to environmental issue, which has become, the global challenges these days. And, as delegates approach the venue, a group of traditional, interesting to see, sniffer dogs also deployed to secure the perimeter. Taman Hutan Raya, or known as Tahura, is located 6 kilometers away from Igusti Ngurah Rai International Airport, and becomes the part of Pemogan village. The reason why Tahura is chosen as one of the main venues for G20 summit is because of the variety of flora and fauna dwell within its biodiversity, which are, not just mangrove, but also several types of birds and aquatic animals. And there are approximately 33 types of mangrove plants available within the forest. And some of which are white padada, white mangrove, and also tancang. Thousands of mangrove plants, and in Tahura Ngurah Rai thrive and unite to become the best defense fort for southern coast of the island. President Joko Widodo expects this visit to mangrove forests can showcase Indonesia's concern in relation to environment, ordinary commitment to truly a global step forward and a great initiative in responding to climate change issue. Muhammad Arif Ismail and Roy reporting live from Tahura Ngurah Rai Mangrove Forest, Bali. Back to you in the studio, Aisyah and Muhammad Idris. Thank you.
All right, Muhammad Arif and also Roy there. Thank you very much for the report, guys. Excellent report as always. And we wish you a safe duty over at Tahura. Thank you again.
We kind of envy that Arif can be there and witness by himself.
Well, such proximity. You know what I will shout though, like, Miss Modi, a quick photo, please. But that wouldn't be possible. So with all the security.
Yeah, because before Tahura can be and enjoyed by the public.
Yeah.
Like this, it is like special prepared for the G20 as well.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. But something that we were curious about from the live report, Vicky, was the vicinity. It didn't seem quite close to the arrival spot, meaning that Arif was not able to give us a first-hand account as to why the lateness of the arrivals of the Western alliances. And we've had a little bit of a background and the latest updates on the emergency meeting. However, it was also interesting to hear that Arif has reported that this is a global effort we mentioned earlier of the global leaders to sort of make a significant gesture towards the climate change. Let's go back to our previous conversations on the latest development in Russia. When we talk about NATO members, Ukraine has, since the beginning of the year, proposed to be a part of NATO. What words have you received and maybe updates on the current ongoing process of Ukraine to become a NATO member, or is that even feasible?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not an easy process,
Exactly.
joining something.
And Putin is so enraged about that.
Exactly. Some NATO member countries are not too keen on it because then it. Some of the rationale is that it would create extra burden on the rest of the NATO members if a country like Ukraine, so close to Russia and having issues like that, joins NATO, which means that it creates more responsibility to the other member states. But some of the other NATO member states are of course supportive as well. But I think all in all, this means that it's not going to be an easy journey for Ukraine. It makes sense, but it's not as simple as that.
And it's not going to be happening anytime soon, do you see?
No, I don't think so.
As I mentioned before, President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that a very significant escalation of the war regarding this matter. Meanwhile, the NATO statement called it a tragic incident. So,
well, yeah, of course. I mean, it's different ways to describe the incident, right? And I think from the Ukrainian point of view, this is of course something that signifies the importance of the conflict itself, and how it should garner more attention globally, because because there are also some concerns that a lot of countries already sort of like losing interest on the issue and already preoccupied with other global affairs. So this could be used as something to again signifies the emergency of and the urgency of the conflict in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And up to this point, we have yet to see any of the NATO leaders arriving at the Tahura. So the entire schedule has been more arrived now. So hopefully, let's take a look at those pictures coming in, and we look forward to seeing who will be arriving. We believe that's the flag of European Union. So we are expecting the presidents of the commissions, the always very colorful Ursula von der Leyen, to exit the car momentarily.
Yeah, so this is the first agenda of the second day of the G20 Indonesia Leaders Summit. And on this agenda, they will be discussing about climate change. Meanwhile, in the other parts of the world, that just happened, the incident that caused...
As we said,
and
such a disruption to the agenda.
Yeah, but talking about that, the Russia-Ukraine invasion since February, so it must be really put on the table. At the same time, they are going to talk about climate change.
Yeah, and Zelensky has stated that it is a significant escalation of the conflict that is on the Ukrainian behalf. But that again, we couldn't just. We're waiting for moments for Ursula von der Leyen to arrive, and the fact that she will be joined.
Yeah.
So that would be something to.
So I would ask Fifi your comments on how this geopolitical issues that has been happening, how the relation with the climate change that what do you see on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just the Ukraine war. I mean, even before, we saw how climate talks the U.S. and China have also stalled in the past few years. So 2 days ago, during the Joe Biden Xi Jinping meeting, it was a breath of fresh air that they declared that they would resume climate talks. So this means how how influential it is, the geopolitical tensions among countries, including on efforts towards climate change mitigation. So and I think with regards to the Ukraine war, of course, then talks would be stalled. Issues like this would derail other issues, and then the policies that countries have to make to adjust to the implications of the war itself. Definitely, this has not been an easy road.
Right. The latest statement that our member of the press have received, Fifi, was that U.S. President Joe Biden said that it is unlikely a missile that landed in eastern Poland was fired from Russia. The investigation is ongoing. So the investigation is ongoing, meaning that more updates will be coming in regard to this.
Yeah. There's always two points of view, and that makes it pretty interesting. It's a statement made in Russia.
Yeah. Poland said that. Poland said a Russian-made missile fell and fired it. It is Russian-made, but they cannot be certain at this point that it was fired by the Russians. Spanish.
Oh he's taking his suit off.
Spanish Pedro Sanchez, Spanish Prime Minister, has arrived. He wanted to put it on. We saw initially when he came out of the car, turned out to be real on me. So it's not a good idea to put his SVP. Wouldn't be a good choice.
But I really hope they put and have prepared.
Who cares about kid? Just as Justin Trudeau, Rishi Sunak, and we have Emmanuel Macron, notably younger leaders leading these great nations.
On the kinds of would of course we were talking about how millennials are going to be the majority of the voters 2024, and the issues they're concerned about is completely different. Their agenda and it applies. Which means that politicians need to come up with strategies of, and I guess that applies to a lot of countries as well, where the newer or the younger leaders have a different strategy into gaining, votes and likability from the voters.
So younger leaders appeal to the younger voters more than the let's just say previous generations. So are you saying that here in our country, more specifically, because we are embarking upon the 2024, the much anticipated year for presidential race, what's the percentage? Do younger voters make up a significant or maybe the largest amount of voters in the country?
I don't have the numbers on the top of elections that we have. It's significantly more. So Indonesia is blessed with a very young population, especially compared to other nations like Japan or South Korea, where they have an aging population. Indonesia is actually below 40 is going to.
So probably in 2024, we will follow suit with the trend, with the global trend of younger leaders.
I mean, not necessarily leader and executive leader, but of course members of parliament as well.
Exactly. To represent their voices in the decision making level. So let's just Aisha, let's just go with the latest updates that we received from our research team here at TVRI World. It's been said that U.S. President Joe Biden has held brief talks with NATO members who are present in Bali, and he said that he supports Poland's investigation on the explosions that occurred in rural Poland near Ukrainian border. And U.S. President Joe Biden has also said that they will make sure exactly what happened, and then they're going to collectively determine their next steps as they investigate. So more words will be coming in on the NATO behalf. And U.S. President Joe Biden also stated that the moment when the world came together in the G20 to urge the de-escalation, Russia continues to show escalation against Ukraine while we're meeting. The audacity of it, do you think, Fifi? Because that was also said by my partner, Aisha here. We are in the thick of it. The G20 Leaders Summit, the major economies making up 85% of world economies, and Russia chose to escalate their missile attacks. Why is that, do you think? Why do they make such a decision at such a crucial time? Putin is not here, only Sergei Lavrov.
Well, the why question has been asked since February, right? Why did they attack? Why did they invade? But I suppose, Ukraine is a very complex issue, and it goes back years.
The Crimea annexation
exactly.
in 2014.
So some say it has become a personal ambition of President Putin. Some call it as part of the whole identity of Russia. They need to have the Crimea as part of the territory. So a lot of factors come into play as to why the why question we asked back in February, and it was not answered. I personally could not find a very satisfying answer as to make it a logical explanation as why. And now, how many months has it been now? 9 months, I think, since February, right?
Yeah, I read it. It's already been like 258 days.
Sure.
Wow. But it was
very
2 days
exact,
ago.
280. So, I mean, the why question remains lingering until now, and with the escalation, it just doesn't make any sense, right? We thought that Russia was already losing capability with the military equipment, with the morale of the troops, but it turns out that's not the case.
Okay. All right, Fifi and Aisha, we will take a quick break again to continue on with more exciting conversations on the G20 Leaders Summits on the second day, and more lectures on the first agenda of the day from the Tahura, or the Grand Mangrove Forest here in Bali. We'll be right back in just a few minutes. Stay with us right here on TVRI World.
People of the world, we are in jeopardy. Striving times to solidarity. Our wish. The sea of change. We cover together. We'll recover stronger. Reaching out for our wish. Heal the world. Whatever more we recover together. We'll recover stronger. Reaching up for our children. Dance from the together, you are stronger. Yeah, the sea together, we children's future. Oh, children's future.
Welcome back to the day-long coverage of the second day, the final day of the G20 Leaders Summit. We are coming to you live from Bali, Indonesia, still with us here, Rahmat Idris, and also my partner Aisyah Fabian, and we're still accompanied by our esteemed guests who we cannot wait to pick her brain on the entire G20 deliberations. Ms. Fifi, thank you very much for still sitting down with us and answering all of our curiosities on the G20. Bringing me to my next question to you, because we've been talking about the Ukraine wars and the ongoing conflicts, but also what's important is the rivalries of these two superpowers. We've been blessed by such a joyful bilateral meeting between Xi Jinping and Joe Biden. And there's a lot of interesting topics that are raised, including one, the disagreement on the use of nuclear weapons, and also the agreement on the de-escalation, or the promise of on China's part that there will be no escalations in the South China Sea and the cross-strait issues. And more importantly, where do we go from here in terms of the relations of US and China? Can you elaborate more on that?
Sure. I mean, yesterday, I could take at least that there would not be a new Cold War between them. So yes, they recognize that they have a competition, but both of them are not in favor of a continued warm and friendly tone from both President Xi Jinping and Joe Biden, which means that it opens possibility for future talks. You know, so that the talk doesn't stop here. They've even assigned their ministers to follow up on some of the issues. So this means that there will be, you know, future close engagement between the two countries. You know, sometimes with two major powers like that, the problem is always whether or not the communication between the two countries go well or not. So in this way, we can have some encouragement. Key takeaway, and on a positive note, I think, is the resumption of the climate talks, which would have a great impact on every other country in the world. Because when the US and China stop their climate discussion, then it's basically postponing a lot of the other talks as well. The other two key takeaways are the two issues that was discussed first, and the last one is I mentioned on North Korea is they've both recognized that it's an important issue. So it means that they covered a broad range of very exactly.
Instead of coming out in a debate or a dispute or disagreements, we did agree. We'll put a halt on that before we delve deeper. Arrivals are French presidents and Hutan. Right.
Tahura.
The Tahura.
Yeah.
And the Netherlands. Okay.
Okay.
Let's have a quick confirmation on that. And
yes, there he
that's
is.
indeed Prime Minister Mark Rutte. So we're going to have to put hold on the arrival of people.
Yeah.
I would have wished I was one of the local people around around him at that moment.
So he just walked around Jimbaran, and then people can take selfies with him.
Yeah. So that was also that shows just potential. Complexities. So you want to see the Balinese. You want to, you want to feel the warmth and the gracious presence of the Balinese people. And that's exactly what Prince Emmanuel Macron did last night.
Yeah, and do you also know that some of the delegates even extended trip after this summit for another few days, or maybe I don't know if they can stay for anytime longer, for a week to be absent from the work.
Right.
But because maybe they want to explore the beauty of Bali.
Okay. And Fifi, adding more to what you've elaborated on the US-China relations, we do need to take a note that the meeting lasted a little over 3 hours between, take a look at the arrival of the delegates from the World Bank, which a critical part in managing the pandemic fund, as we mentioned earlier in this program. So where do they go from here? The 5 key takeaways that you've analyzed from their meetings, and the possibilities that it will be continued by the foreign ministers of each respective countries. So where do they go from there?
Well, they need to follow up on some of the issues that are already discussed. And I think what's more important, at least looking at it from countries outside the other countries, I mean, from us looking from Southeast Asia, is that how do they manage competition in other parts of the world, including in Southeast Asia? Because we see that Southeast Asia has been somewhat of an arena for the competition between the US and China, and they really need to manage their policies towards regions like Southeast Asia.
Right. Chancellor Olaf Scholz has arrived at the Tahura, greeting President Joko Widodo. So we see here, Fifi, that one by one, each head of states of the NATO leaders, who we informed earlier had an emergency meeting, has arrived here at the Tahura. However, there's not so much smile on their face.
And you know what I also noticed? The NATO leaders are the ones wearing a shirt and suit.
Oh, true.
Yes, they were just at the meeting where they had to wear that suit.
Exactly.
And had to take it off by the time they arrived.
Yeah.
So here we have Prime Minister.
The others are comfortably wearing their polo shirt,
already
right?
set from the hotel.
Or linen shirt.
Prime Minister Fumio Kishida here just arrived at the Tahura, the Grand Forest Park of Ngurah Rai, Bali, taking part in the mangrove tree planting session. So they are now arriving at a much shorter intervals than before. I guess they're trying to expedite, they speed it up a little bit. So while we talk about this, what exactly is, we know that it's North Organizations, NATO. So what does this entity or organizations entail?
After the Second World War, okay, this is a history lesson then.
We would like
probably
to hear
just
it.
highlights of it. So our audience,
sure.
because we've been mentioning NATO for a
Yeah,
while.
I
So
mean,
just
after
an
the
overview.
Second World War, of course, the world was divided into two blocks, right? So the
Exactly.
Western and then the Eastern. So the Western countries then decided to create this organization, meaning as to pool their resources in terms of security and defending their territories
So
against
that's
the-
military force.
Exactly.
The focus
Exactly.
is military strength.
So and the treaty was that if one member of the treaty is attacked, then it becomes the responsibility of the other member to defend.
Signatory. yeah?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It becomes the responsibility of the other member states to defend. Now they can, the others can assist Ukraine by supplying them with weapons and military equipments. But if Ukraine joins NATO, it becomes their responsibility to also send their troops to defend the territory.
Yeah, that's good that you mentioned that, and we had a little bit of a historical lesson today. And this is actually on Article 4 of NATO that Poland discusses, which this attack by missile could trigger another tense, concerning, and yeah.
More delegates are arriving. Just reverting back screen now. Aisha and also Ms. Fifi. And that is the U.S. flight arms taken. So we expect momentarily President Joe Biden will be exiting the car. And that this is quite a change because we haven't seen other NATO leaders arriving. And usually,
And usually he would arrive last.
Yes.
Yes.
The morning has started just so differently than expected, then arranged and then prepared. But it's so good to see. We saw the visuals earlier, Fifi and also Aisha, the lineup of elementary school students.
Yes.
Just to greet them. That is so heartwarming. We haven't seen that for a while, particularly in the time of the pandemic, where we see that just crowds of people welcoming arrivals. So that sort of gives us an example of we have now recovered. President Joko Widodo has also been let go of his masks the entire day today. So I don't think I've spotted everyone wearing a mask. So that's a good thing.
I'm so nervous waiting for this moment, like how President Joe Biden.
Wow, mechanism. There he is. You can see that his his sunglasses.
Yeah, to cover his expression, maybe.
I was gonna say that's always a very a very useful trick to sort of hide your expressions because eyes can really tell something. Whether you're concerned, you're thinking about something, right, Fifi? And cameras is a cruel thing. They can capture smallest little details on your face that sometimes if we just look at them in person, we wouldn't see it, but cameras can catch those things. So, but it is also broad daylight out there. It makes sense to just put on sunglasses. There you have it.
Wearing a suit.
Wearing a suit.
Yeah. Okay, let's see who's going to take the suit off. That would be very recommended to.
And in fact, he's wearing like a full attire with a tie too.
President Joe Biden arriving at Hutan Raya.
Ended by President Joko Widodo there.
When we take a look at those and everything, you can obviously tell that there is warmth between them, Fifi.
Yes.
And you've seen them together we've seen them together in many previous occasions as well. How do you, describe the relations between these two leaders?
I mean, not only between the leaders, but I think
two nations.
U.S.-Indonesia relations has always been very fruitful and a lot of new initiatives as of late. And I think it's both leaders are very eager to promote this relationship and then create new endeavors for cooperation that has not been touched upon before. So I think the idea and the spirit is similar, is shared between the two leaders.
Oh, he is taking his.
What do you think have been the strongest elements or points of bilateral relations between Indonesia and the US? We know trade.
Yes.
What about
of course.
military and social economic aspects?
Military a little bit, but it's still under the radar in a way, because US definitely has its allies in Asia, with which it prefers to hold stronger military ties, of course.
Vietnam, for example.
Philippines, for example.
Philippines too, that's right. They have their base there, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so, and then in Northeast Asia, of course, there's Japan and South Korea. So it would make more sense for the US to have stronger military ties with these countries. So US-Indonesia military relations is still a little bit under the radar in a way. There have been quite a number of cooperation in terms of technical assistance and so on. So and which has been very beneficial for Indonesia as well.
Do you think it's because Indonesia has also somewhat close and strong relations with China and a lot of cooperations as well?
Not necessarily.
US a little bit to...
Not necessarily. I mean, in a way, if that's a factor, it would actually make the US eager to cooperate more with Indonesia to balance that, right? But in this case, but in this case, I don't think that's a factor. I think it's a matter of strategizing their posture in this part of the world, and they would have more benefits, I suppose, to use the existing alliance they already have. Yeah.
Right. Pulling in the driveway, we expect that's the entourage from the United Kingdom. So we expect the severely dashing and striking. Was that again? Rishi Sunak. Aisha will be exiting the car momentarily.
So Rishi Sunak, not only the star of the night last night at the gala dinner, but also Justin Trudeau.
What do you mean the star at the gala dinner?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, like we all clapped and like whoa, embraced the when the camera kind of got a
and the charms of a very popular public leader. But I guess the rest of the UK and probably the world too is waiting for what exactly Sunak will be bringing to the table, right, Fifi, in terms of policies and everything, and turning things around post the administration, post the leadership of Terus.
Yeah, I mean, quick succession of prime ministers.
Historical succession.
Yeah, but I think most of the policies, in fact, have been domestic, right? With new prime ministers, they have not had any change in the way that they want to promote their cooperation. So the UK has actually been the latest dialogue partners for ASEAN, which was admitted this year, I think.
Okay.
So it shows a strong intention of the UK after Brexit.
Yeah.
The European Union is a dialogue partner for ASEAN, right? So when they had Brexit, it felt the need to actually apply for a dialogue partnership with ASEAN as well.
How has Brexit actually impacted the UK? Because it's been mind-boggling.
Do you mean domestically or in terms of its foreign policy?
Both, but probably more on the foreign policy because we're at the G20.
Yeah, on foreign policy, there has not been any drastic changes. I suppose. I mean, this is viewing it from Southeast Asia, right? I'm pretty sure its relations
maybe
with other with European countries might have been different.
Yeah.
But in terms of looking at it from Southeast Asia, there has not been any significant change because the UK intends to follow up what it misses from Brexit. Right, like for example, the relationship with ASEAN and its relations with the Southeast Asian countries as well. So
the fact that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has just arrived too. So this is an exciting day for him. He'll be accepting the handover from President Joko Widodo later on the day. Fifi, what do you think is going through his mind?
Oh, I was chatting with some colleagues from India the other day.
Mr. Modi.
Mr. Modi. I was trying to get the mood in India because we talked about how 1 year ago we saw banners and everything is G20 in Jakarta. So they that is in New Delhi at the moment. They're seeing banners of G20 already sort of campaigning about the significance of G20 and so on.
And Macron has also arrived. We will delve deeper probably in the second half of the day with your more in-depth analysis on the Indian prospect of its presidency.
But we have to revise that the one that we thought that was Rishi Sunak, but apparently it was the Prime Minister of Australia.
Yes.
Yes, Anthony Albanese.
Yeah.
And okay, let's put aside the issue between something that is happening in Poland, the incident that actually the Prime Minister of Australia said that he will speak like a new standing on climate change. This is actually what's the main issue to be discussed here.
Yes, exactly.
In the agenda.
Because I was in Brisbane in September for the RR of natural disasters, and so is here in the Asia Pacific, Indonesia including the Ring of Fire. We don't have to further elaborate on that. So disaster area in the world, Asia Pacific regions. So there have been quite an attentions towards these regions, and then as a matter of fact, the Australian government under the administrations of Anthony Albanese has pledged 9 production in the region of Asia at the tahun in regard
I
to
think
the
they were
escalations.
intentionally separated. You know?
Oh yeah.
No, I'm just joking.
They're not going even tenser than they already are. So what a moment are we witnessing. High economies, the biggest economies leaders looking so casual, sitting together, country in Bali, basking in the glory. So what do you make of this moment, Fifi?
Yeah, I mean, this is it's great. It's really
it's a rare sight to see,
exactly,
isn't it?
a rare sight to see, and definitely something that would be in the media for the longest time.
Yeah,
you would see these pictures.
Xi Jinping also wants to send out. But Minister Narendra Modi is also wearing something blue, the vest. That's very traditional to Indian attire. And as echoing what you said, Fifi, my Indian friends have also been texting me on WhatsApp asking, do you get to see our Prime Minister? Can you take a selfie with him and send it to us? Because that would be really great. I said, yeah, but we're probably going to see him at some point, but not for a selfie, bro. I said, that's just because I was in India just a couple of weeks ago, and for the Diwali, if you remember, and one of the main events was the presentations of the Rama dance, a god to the Indian people in Ayodhya, where Rama was born, and Narendra Modi, Prime Minister, was there himself, and you wouldn't believe the amount of entourage and security surrounding Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and that says something about his participations in Bali, which was quite understated. I mean, we didn't see it. I didn't have a first-hand account, but it wasn't as it was in India. So that says something about his being here and the country being very relaxed among all of these G20 leaders, because he probably believes that the security measures for all of these other leaders of major economies should already be very strict and very in high detail. So he should feel very secure about what we can provide him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's always encouraging seeing this gestures and this very relaxed and coming back to what we saw earlier. Hopefully, I mean, we could only hope that this opens a way for a more a smooth discussion later.
Out of the tree planting, feeling more relaxed, have fresh air, and just ready to agree on